towards explainable adjudicative variance, quantifying judicial discretion via gated multitask learning, by Stanisław Sójka, Felix Steffek, and Matthias Grabmair. Purpose: academic research and educational study. When a case enters the UK Employment Tribunal, its path to resolution is not monolithic. The system operates through two entirely different adjudicative channels. The first pathway consists of merit-based determinations. These are rulings where a judge evaluates the actual factual evidence and the legal substance of the dispute to decide who wins and who loses. The second pathway consists of non-merit-based disposals. Here, cases are terminated purely on technical grounds, like a missed administrative deadline or a lack of jurisdiction, without the judge ever engaging with the underlying facts. Most machine learning models built to predict legal judgments ignore this distinction. By focusing solely on optimizing generalized legal logic, they treat the presiding judge as an invisible, static variable. They are judge-agnostic. Because of this, a standard text classifier looks at a procedural strikeout and a substantive, fact-driven victory and processes them as identical mathematical outcomes. It obscures the unique discretionary mechanisms driving each decision. This raises a critical question for legal natural language processing. How do we mathematically disentangle the objective facts of a legal case from the subjective discretion of the human judge deciding it? Solving this requires abandoning standard text-only classifiers. We need a neural architecture explicitly designed to map adjudicative variance. Researchers developed an 11-class detailed case outcome taxonomy, sorting outcomes into merit-based or non-merit categories. These boundaries act as a structural regularizer, forcing the model to learn distinct semantic pathways, preventing the conflation of technical dismissals with factual losses. Here is the hybrid architecture. Raw input data is ingested by a GEMMA4 backbone to output sequence embeddings. Next, the label-wise attention network maps these embeddings into distinct parallel subspaces for each of the 11 specific detailed case outcome labels. This parallel structure isolates the factual evidence supporting different legal outcomes. By securing the objective facts in their own distinct lanes, the architecture is ready to incorporate the identity of the judge. Adding a judge's identity to a machine learning model is usually done through simple concatenation, but treating judicial identity as a static feature assumes that a judge exerts the exact same amount of bias on every case they hear. In reality, judicial influence is context-dependent. A model must treat identity as a dynamic control variable that activates only during rulings, allowing administrative discretion. The authors built a judge-aware gated fusion mechanism. The system projects the judge's ID into an embedding, mapping historical behavior. Inside the gate, an equation processes text and judge features, opening wide to consult the judge's embedding during procedurally ambiguous terminations. Conversely, if the case facts mandate a strict merit-based outcome, the gate shuts towards zero, suppressing the judge's signal entirely. This mathematical valve allows the network to selectively encode human behavioral variance, without letting it override the objective facts of a clear-cut case. The model binds these separated semantic pathways back together using a multitask learning objective. A main head predicts the broad general case outcome, while an auxiliary head predicts the 11-class detailed case outcome, forcing logical consistency across these parallel pathways. This is a highly specialized structural design. The current industry standard in natural language processing takes the exact opposite approach, simply scaling up the size of a generative large language model. The left panel shows the generative baseline. Engineers inject judge IDs and taxonomic definitions directly into a massive LLM's prompt. This creates a severe bottleneck, forcing complex, parallel legal signals to squeeze through a single autoregressive output funnel, predicting tokens. This sets up an ultimate test of architectural tension. Does the sheer brute force scale of an LLM outsmart specialized, differentiable structural engineering? The empirical results provide a definitive answer. The generative, prompt-based model struggles to process the nuanced variables. The researchers identified a phenomenon called sub-additive composition. Providing a judge's name and detailed outcome rules individually improved the generative model, but combining them in a single prompt caused performance to plateau. The autoregressive channel collapsed the independent signals. The hybrid architecture, or B-track, routes these exact same signals through its dedicated parallel head. By keeping the pathways structurally distinct, it restores additive composition. This chart illustrates the parameter, accuracy, calibration Pareto frontier. The result is clear. The structured hybrid architecture, labeled here as B2, establishes a new state-of-the-art macro F1 score on this benchmark. Looking at the horizontal axis, we see a massive discrepancy in trainable parameters. The structured hybrid model requires roughly an order of magnitude fewer parameters than the generative models on the right. Yet on the vertical axis, measuring accuracy, the lightweight B2 model outright beats the massive generative variance, with performance gains heavily concentrated on the rarest, most complex cases. It is also vastly more reliable. The physical size of these bubbles represents expected calibration error. The B2 model is the smallest bubble, meaning its confidence levels are the most tightly calibrated to its actual accuracy, a critical requirement for legal analytics. For highly nuanced legal classification, differentiable architectural structure strictly dominates brute force scaling. We can ground these abstract metrics by looking at a real-world rescue case, a dispute involving a dismissal, an alleged protected act, and safeguarding concerns. The generative model read this case, wrongly identified standard misconduct cues in the text, and collapsed the entire nuanced dispute into a simplistic prediction that the claimant loses. The hybrid model, utilizing its parallel L1 pathways and auxiliary taxonomy, preserved the atypical procedural boundaries. It correctly classified the outcome as an other category, maintaining the minority class pathway despite strong surface-level text cues. The ultimate empirical proof that this model successfully isolates human adjudicatory styles is found in this graph, the judge territory map. This is a T-SNE projection of the judge embeddings. It proves the model didn't just memorize training data. The embeddings naturally arrange themselves into distinct geographic clusters based on actual behavioral traits. There is a clear spatial divide. Strict proceduralist judges who favor non-merit disposals are grouped in Cluster 0 on the left, while merit-based adjudicators form Cluster 1 on the right. The model's gate activation gradient perfectly aligns with these regions. The authors note two limitations to this study. First, the inputs are extracted from final written judgments rather than raw case filings. Because judgments are authored retrospectively, they may contain implicit post hoc rationalizations, where the judge unknowingly structured the narrative to support their own ruling. Second, the fine-grained legal taxonomy acts as a silver standard. It was generated via an LLM extraction pipeline rather than pure human annotation, meaning there is a potential noise floor in the auxiliary supervision. Ultimately, this research yields three definitive takeaways. Legal prediction systems must actively disentangle objective facts from subjective discretion. Dynamic gating solves the long-standing problem of how to handle ambiguous identity variables. And in domains with strong institutional rules, correct architectural inductive biases will always outperform sheer language model scale.